In this second exercise, we're going to look at defining a checkerboard inside of a pane, inside of a scene, inside of a stage. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of drawing pretty much on our screen. That's going to be the main difficulty here. So I used actually an empty JFX template file. Okay, so that did almost nothing, and the only thing I was modifying right now is the name of the class, CheckerBoard. Okay, I'm going to call it. I have a basic pane created. I put the pane in a scene. I set the title. I put the scene in the stage that was given to me as parameter of the start method, and then I show the stage. So nothing really beyond the most elementary stuff we need actually in a JavaFX application. So I'm going to compile this to track down any typos, then I'm going to run it, and as you would have guessed, okay, it's not going to do much. It shows a stage that has nothing in it, really. The scene is empty, the pane is empty, all the components are there, but we haven't done anything very exciting yet. So now let's move into the interesting stuff. So I'm going to use two variables, width that I'm going to set at, say, 200, and you guessed it, height that is going to be set to let's say 200 as well, and I'm using the keyboard in the wrong window, sorry. Double height equal 200 as well. So I'm going to use those variables to not have to hard code everywhere in my code, obviously, the values 200. And these are values that I'm going to, the width and the height of my pane are values that are going to come back quite often in this code. So my next step is to say, well, I'm going to use those two constants actually to set the dimension of my pane. Okay, so I'm going to put the width here, the height here. Okay, well, before to go any further, let's track down again typo, minor mistakes, and then let's run it to see what it looks like. Well, okay, still empty, but at least I've been able to set my dimension how I wanted them. Please note that we didn't prevent actually the window to be resizable. So that means that, as usual, you know, we are not going to handle the resizing here in this exercise. We'll do that in a later exercise. So I'm going to close this. And now we're going to get into the part where we are actually drawing those checkerboards. So we are going to have to do some work that's going to go along the line of for each row of the checkerboard, then inside each row for each column of the checkerboard, then draw a rectangle. So that suggests, you know, that we have two nested loops to start off with. Okay, that structure of for each row, then for each column, then do something is really a nested loop. Okay, so we have used that when we're manipulating matrices. Okay, matrices of integers, stuff like that. So I'm going to just go ahead and say, here are my two loops. For I equals 0, I lesser than 8, which is the size of a default checkerboard, I plus plus. Okay, so that's my outer loop. And then inside of it, I'm going to say for int j, and it's going to be the same thing, right? J equals 0 to start off with, j lesser than 8, and j plus plus. So this is going to allow me to have the basic structure here, the basic control structure to iterate over each cell that is going to be my checkerboard. So how am I going to represent a cell from a checkerboard? Well, I'm going to represent it with a rectangle. Okay, so we have different shapes that are available in JavaFX. One of them is the rectangle. So I'm going to define a rectangle R, new rectangle, and this is where it's going to get interesting, because the parameter for the constructor of rectangle are the coordinates at which I want my rectangle, and then the width and the height. Okay, so I have the width and the height total for the pane. So what I need is divided by the number of cells that are in each row and each column, which is 8. So that's going to be the easy part. Okay, I'm going to skip some parameter, and I'm going to say the width and the height of my rectangle is width divided by 8 and height divided by 8. Okay, so this is how big my squares are going to be. Okay, then what about the position? Well, it's going to move, the position is going to move by increment of, the size of a cell. So I'm still going to use those two constants divided by 8, but then I need to position it based on, what row am I looking at. So that's going to be given to me by I, and what column I am looking at, which is going to be given to me by J. Okay, so that's pretty much how we are going to draw those rectangles. So right now we created the object of class rectangle, okay, but we didn't assign any color, we didn't fill it with any color, we didn't even assign a color to draw it, to draw the contours of it, the outline. We certainly didn't do anything to alternate between white and black, rectangles. So we really have like just the minimum right now. But even worse, we don't even have a way to display those rectangles. To be able to display the rectangles, we need to do pane.getChildren. So pane.getChildren is a way that you are going to get pretty much a collection, okay, that represent all of the objects that are right now in inside the pane. And that collection is going to be empty because we didn't add anything yet to the pane. But as we go and create all those rectangles with the appropriate coordinate, etc., we are going to add them to that collection. So this is how we do it, okay? I'm adding my rectangle R to that pane. So let's compile. A few things missing, the import statement, yes, that's it, cannot find symbol. So I'm going to add here import java fx dot scene dot shape dot rectangle. Okay, so this is where I'm going to find that rectangle object. Let's get rid of that error, move on to the next. Okay, we have nothing else missing. And let's just test again to see what happens. Okay, so by default, all of my rectangles have been added. They are all black border, black fill. They fill completely the pane. It's not exactly what we want, okay, by far, but it just shows that the program at least is not crashing, right? So we are now ready to go to the next step, which is we are going to play a little bit with those colors, okay? So we need to alternate things. So the first thing that needs to alternate is every time I draw a rectangle, the next rectangle should be actually of the opposite color. So if I drew a white rectangle, the next one should be a black rectangle. If I drew a black rectangle, the next one should be a white rectangle. So I'm going to use a variable to keep track of what's happening here. Okay, so inside my my class here, my method, sorry, I'm going to have a boolean, and I'm going to call it isWhite. Okay, and I'm going to start with, well, let's say isWhite equal false. That's totally arbitrary, okay, and I'll change that after, but it's just a way to get started with one color, and then we need to decide when we need to switch to the next color. Well, let's see. Here, I just created my rectangle, okay, so assuming that I set it to the proper color, which I have not done yet, then the next rectangle should be of the opposite color. So I could say isWhite equal negation, logical negation of isWhite. So if isWhite was true, now it's false. If it was false, now it's true. Okay, so I still do not have anything to use that boolean to determine the color. Okay, so I need to do that next. Let's see. My rectangle here, I'm going to say first that I'm going to say set the stroke, which is actually what I'm going to use to draw the rectangle itself, okay, to a specific color, in this case, black. So this is not going to fill the rectangle, this is just to say this is what I draw, what color I draw the rectangle with. So if I'm using color, obviously I need to add here import javafx dot scene dot paint dot color, okay. What else? So I set the color of the stroke to black, and then I'm going to use the isWhite boolean to determine whether I want to fill my rectangle with white or black. So that's easy, if isWhite. So if the Boolean says this one should be white, then I'm doing r.setFill. That's a method that allows me to set a fill color in a shape, okay? And I'm going to use the enumerates from the class color again, saying I want this one to be black, else, well, r.setFill color dot white, okay? And that's actually pretty close to what we want. Let me indent this real quick. There we go. What else? Then we switch. Yeah, we are pretty much good here. So let's compile and see what we are missing. So no typo, always good news, no import missing. And then let's give it a run to see how far we are from the result. All right. So this is what we get. So we are not yet there, okay? We have something that's making progress in a sense. There is some alternation. The alternation actually happens, you know, in the columns. So that's actually this this loop here. That inner loop is going from column to column. So we are alternating every time we have a rectangle, but then look at what happens. We are black here at the end of the first column. We go back here, we're white, and that's not good. Okay, every time we start a new column, we should actually you know, change the color as well. So we didn't take care of that yet. So we're going to do that right now. When I have my outer loop, my I loop here, I'm going to set the Boolean is white, okay? So every time I start a new outer loop, I'm going to say my Boolean is going to be, well, for the first iteration is going to be, for example, white, then it's going to be black, then it's going to be white, then it's going to be black. So if I use the number of iteration I to guide me, okay, I can do a modulo. I can say, okay, is it an odd or even iteration? And if I have I modulo 2 equals 0, okay, well, then I test if I am in the first iteration or a second iteration, okay, in an odd iteration or even iteration. And that's going to allow me to give true false, to set true false in that is white variable and alternate. Okay, so let's see how that pans out. So we have compiled without problem. Let's run. It's a lot better. Okay, so still, again, we're still not, you know, resizing and stuff like that, but you can see that, actually, you can even see here the stroke color that we set, okay, that allows us to have this contour. Otherwise, the white square would have no border, so that would look a little weird here. So you see the set stroke color, you see the alternation of black and white tiles on our checkerboard. So we are pretty much done with this exercise. I mean, we have implemented our checkerboard drawing application.